invite Datuk Sri Jahan Raslan to share his welcome remarks. Silakan, Datuk.
Thank you very much, Nick. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to all of our esteemed panelists and most of all to our distinguished participants, all of you today. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Johan. Firstly, if I may, a very quick introduction to Climate Governance Malaysia, or CGM, and the CEO Action Network, or CAN, C-A-N. More acronyms to fill up your brain, I'm afraid. I'm very sorry about that. Climate Governance Malaysia, so first of all, is the Malaysian chapter of the World Economic Forum's Climate Governance Initiative. It was founded in 2019, so it's very, very new, and comprises non-executive directors from leading enterprises in Malaysia. The CEO Action Network, or CAN, in Malaysia is even newer, only founded in 2020. CAN is a network of CEOs representing around 45 leading companies across 20 priority sectors in Malaysia, and we work to address sustainability. So, this is the private sector trying to play our part, and specifically within that, it's directors and CEOs. Collectively, the focus is to make sure that companies play their part in sustainability. Companies, as you know, can make a huge difference in the fight against climate change and all its effects if we get our act together. Therefore, CAN and CGM are organizing this series of roundtables across 3 or 4 main sectors: energy and transport, plantation and agro-commodities, the circular economy, and of course, this one, our very own property development and construction. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, CAN and CGM are really honored to have you with us today. We all have a common goal in moving our industry forward on climate action. To be really effective, we need clear and predictable government policy. In today's session, we hope to get feedback and ideas on those high impact areas that can significantly lower our sector's carbon impact and get us on this road to net zero that we all want to be on. Out of this, CAN and CGM will prepare a report, so that's the output, suggesting how government can help the sector to fight climate change. And this is timed in the run-up to the November COP26 conference in Glasgow that's coming up. More generally, of course, we just want to play our part in building a whole of society and all of government engagement between all of us stakeholders in the building sector in Malaysia. I would like to thank our moderator, eminent architect, Serena Hijaz. Thank you very much for being with us today, Serena. And the panelists, all 4 of you gentlemen, for investing their time with us today. Look forward to that. I would also like to thank Reda, Green RE, and Samdabi Property Berhad for organizing this and the other roundtables in this series. We honestly could not have done this without you all. So thank you all very much. I'm confident that with the excellent moderator and panelists we have today with us, and with your input as well, we are going to have a rich exchange of ideas. Thank you again. Assalamu alaikum. And back to you, Nick.
Thank you, Datuk. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the next segment, just a gentle reminder that you may share any comments, questions, or policy suggestions in the chat box at any point throughout the session. So we highly encourage and welcome your contribution to the discussion. Okay, next up, I would like to introduce AR Serena Hijaz, Council Member of Malaysia Green Building Council, MGBC, and Director of Hijaz Kasturi Associates. A graduate from the Bartlett School of Architecture and University of Sydney, Serena has over 20 years of experience in the field of architectural planning and design. On that note, over to you, Serena, for the next agenda. Thank you. You have your mic unmute.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'd like to say a big thank you to CEO Action Network and Climate Governance of Malaysia for organizing this roundtable, which is very apt, I think, at this stage where we are at climate change and also in preparation for COP26. So thank you very much. This is round 2 of a series of talks. Round 1, we had reducing the embodied carbon in the built environment. And today we'll be basically covering reducing operational carbon in the built environment. And we have 4 very strong panelists with us. We have Suruhanjaya Tenaga, Deputy Director. We have the President of MESCO. We have the President of MPIA, and we also have the Executive Director, Group Executive Director of Sunway Group. So before we start this session, I want to actually just give a little bit of a background of what we mean by operational carbon. To start the ball rolling, and then introduce the panelists who will talk on their specific issues coming in. Okay. Reducing operational target. All right, so let me just share the screen. All right, can you see my screen? Thank you for that introduction, and I'd just like to start to proceed next. So Malaysian Green Building Council basically covers the built environment. Can you see my screen? Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Now we can see it.
In Roundtable 1, we covered that essentially 38% of the global CO2 emission comes from the construction and the built environment. 10% of that is embodied carbon, and 28% comes from operational carbon. What do we mean by operational? And that's about 25% of global CO2 emission comes from operational carbon, which covers essentially a big area. Operational carbon in energy is needed to light up, cool down, energize your homes, workplace, hospitals, stations, airport, factories, and the infrastructure of cities. So it starts very much from the homes right up to the built environment of the city. And covering 28% of this operational carbon in energy is really energy efficiency and renewable energy. And why I start with the energy efficiency, it really starts with the baseline on how we actually approach the design of our buildings, how we create it to be energy efficient, which we've all said basically is the low-hanging fruits of the operational carbon. And then moving on to renewable energy to basically give us the full balance is the only way for us to shift from business as usual to what will become the new norm. And in preparation for this climate change, which is already happening, and the 1.5 degree change, which is already measured up in Penang Island itself, we really need to prepare ourselves and embrace this EE to RE. So I want to give you a little bit of a background in terms of lowering energy and what it actually means. This is basically about 15 different buildings, and this graph shows essentially the performance of each of these buildings from IKEA Cheras to Laman Pikenas to Chaurasta Market. And what it's showing is that by lowering the energy, we can basically lower the carbon or CO2 reduction drastically. A lot of these buildings are already reduced by about 30 to 50% through building envelope, passive design, and lowering the building energy intensity by design. So we always say within the council that the way forward is to lower the energy first, and then on top of that, to add the renewable energy in order for us to really get the change that we can get. And sometimes we don't know what that means. And so I'd like to show to you what that means. CO2 reduction emissions, these are from 500 buildings sourced from Green Building Index, for example. The CO2 reduction yearly is equivalent to 1.118 million tons of CO2 a year, which is basically 22 times the land area of Kuala Lumpur in terms of sequestration equivalent to carbon sequestration. So this is really quite significant. And at the moment, we are actually not running the requirement for EE as mandatory, as opposed to Singapore, for example. Equivalent to that is like removing 243,000 cars on the road. So to give value to and to give you a relationship of what CO2, because I think a lot of people don't have this idea of what CO2 reduction actually means. It also means that we get up to about, from this, just these 500 projects, about 776 million kilowatts a year of saving. That's equivalent to about 2.4% of Malaysian households. And remember, this is still voluntary at this stage after 10 years. The total energy savings from this is equivalent to 388 million a year. So you can see that it does make a return of investment. It does make a significant change if we reduce the energy consumption from our buildings, and we have the tools to do that now. So when we are looking at a net zero operational carbon, we really should be looking at 4 guiding principles: lowering our energy use, having a measurement and verification, and having a low carbon energy supply in terms of inside or offsite renewable energy in order for us to meet this balance. The World Green Building Council is looking at targets that are in the 2030 and 2050. Why? Because in 10 years, essentially, the climate change is already happening, and we really need this race to reduce this impact. In the embodied section that we had previously, the discussion was whether we look at something of a significant embodied carbon reduction, which is part of it. But in the net zero operational carbon, we really should be looking at targets within this 2030 and 2050 in order that we can mitigate the effects within our environment. So one of the biggest effects of this in terms of environment is already being measured up in Penang. It is not the floods that are basically is the biggest impact, but it's this heat island effect that is the biggest impact. And that is basically the temperature rising within the built environment itself. So taking us through today, we have the speakers, panelists here, and we will start with, first, I would like to have 2 poll questions being raised right now. We are going to have 2 poll questions at the beginning of this panelist roundtable, and then we'll have another 2 questions that will be shown later on. So I'd like to invite you all to participate in these poll questions. So the poll question before the event is, should Malaysia's net zero emission target be by 2050, yes, no, too late in 2050, or too soon in 2050? So if you could just take a poll and let us know, what are your thoughts? The second question we have is, in order to drive the advancement of net zero in the operational energy of buildings, do you think it should be a voluntary certification, a mandatory regulation, or there should be more economic incentives, or there should be more awareness and capacity building? I see Zulkifli seeing with where it should be, so he can do the reporting back up.
Excellent.
Excellent. So have we received all the polls for the first question? Should it be before 2050? Or poll number 1? All the answers in already?
We have 71 responses so far for the first poll.
Okay.
Yeah. 57% voted yes. 38% voted 2050 is too late. For the second poll, we have 98 responses. 63% voted mandatory regulation. 27% building.
Okay, thank you very much for your poll submission. I would like to introduce to us Zulkifli Umar from Suruhan Jaya Tenaga. He's the Deputy Director, Energy Efficiency and Conservation Department of Industry and Operation of the Energy Commission of Malaysia. He began his career with Energy Commission Malaysia back in 2005 in the legal department, performing enforcement tasks under the Electricity Supply Act of 1990, and then shifted to the Department of Gas Development and Regulation of Energy Commission Malaysia in 2008. Related to the safety of gas. Duty and here in 2008 performance standards requirements for domestic and industrial appliances, and the promotion of energy audit and retrofit and energy performance contracting, as well as energy efficiency project and financing activities, the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan 2016 to 2025, and the energy efficiency and conservation activities in Malaysia. Over to you, Zul.
Thank you, Sarina. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Please call me Zul, and I wish to express that it is an honor for me to be given the opportunity to share with all of you about EE, energy efficiency, or we call it EE initiatives in Malaysia. This is a very interesting subject to me, and I hope all of you will enjoy it too. Okay. So everyone can hear me and can see the slides, huh?
Yes, very clear.
Thank you.
Zul.
All right. I've been doing EE since 2012. Before that, I was doing some other regulatory activities in Energy Commission. So in 2012, we started with an action taken known as energy performance contracting to be implemented in the government sector, and from that we moved to MAPS, and from that all other activities relating to EE with respect to the three sectors in Malaysia: industry, commercial, and residential. I would like to share with you in the beginning, this is not an indication of energy efficiency per se, but I just like to share that you can get this from our National Energy Balance publication by Energy Commission. It's the final energy consumption per capita in ASEAN. As you can see, Malaysia has been highlighted green, and the rest is in orange. As you can see, in terms of consumption per capita, Singapore and Brunei is the highest in ASEAN. Whereas with respect to final energy intensity, Singapore is the least in terms of energy intensity consumption, whereas the rest goes up, and Malaysia is about the same. Okay, just a thought, a food for thought. Thank you. All right, I'd like to begin with the first regulation dealing with energy efficiency, but in electricity in Malaysia, known as Efficient Management of Electrical Energy Regulations 2008. It's a mouthful, so we always shorten it to EMER 2008. This regulation is subjected to any installation consuming or generating, but here are focused on consuming, electricity equal or exceeding 3 million kilowatt hour in 6 months, consecutive months. Basically, in a layman terms, I used to say that these regulations are subjected to installations that are paying a minimum of electricity bill of about 2.4 million ringgit a year. That's big, 2.4 million ringgit a year. So the purpose of this regulation is so that the installation can manage the electricity consumption. The total annual consumption of installations subjected to this regulation, there are about 2,000 of them. They are consuming about 40 terawatt hour annually. There are about 25,000 industry installation registered with the TNB, and about 1,500 of them is subjected to this regulation. And the best part is that, excuse me, this 1,500 installation is actually consuming 80% of total industry consumption. So in terms of numbers, it is low, but in terms of consumption, it is very high. And there are about 1.5 million installation under commercial, and about 500 installation under commercial sector are subjected to the regulation. Okay, now what do they need to do when they are subjected to the regulation? Energy Commission will send them a notice informing them so. So the first thing they need to do is to appoint a registered electrical energy manager. And number two, they have to submit a written confirmation of the appointment, because we are not psychic. We wouldn't know that you have appointed a registered electrical energy manager unless you have informed us so. The other thing they need to do is to submit policy of efficient management, objectives, and the accounts and document pertaining to efficient management of electrical energy, and other reports required by Energy Commission from time to time. Since the gazettement of the regulation in 2008, these are the numbers of energy manager we have registered, and now we have a total of about 1,454 energy manager registered to service all the installation subjected under the regulation. We have a few manners in the way we registered energy managers. As you can see, the last one, there is an interview where you can actually come to Energy Commission and directly go through the process of registration. We call it interview process. Or we have an institution that we have recognized to provide trainings and also exams and interviews, such as ASEAN Energy Management Scheme, short for IMAS, or Malaysian Association Energy Service Company, MISCO. We also have a program called Energy Audit Conditional Grant, short for EACG, where we have registered energy manager through this program. And if you were to register with UTM under the Masters of Management program, once you graduated, we will immediately register you as energy manager. The activity of EMIR 2008 comprises of enforcement. Yes, we do lots of enforcement with regards to those who have not complied with the regulation. There are not many of them. The problem is sometimes those who are at the borderline, who are sometimes subjected and not subjected to the regulation, those are the ones that we have to really monitor, as well as those who are consuming the most. We do conduct energy management audit from time to time to ensure that those who have submitted their energy saving measures have conducted what they have informed us that they wanted to do. And then we are continuous monitoring of EMIR 2008. This is using an online system which is known as Energy Management Information System, or EMIS, where they can the installation can now submit all the requirements online through a web-based system. All right, now with regards to the EMIR regulation are subjected to large industry and large commercial sectors only. With regards to residential sector, we have what we call Minimum Energy Performance Standards, or short for MAPS. It is gazetted in 2013, 3rd May 2013, 2 days before election. I remember this very well because I was there when the minister signed the gazettement of the regulation. It is in the beginning subjected to 5 appliances, that is aircon, non-ducted single-speed wall-mounted, fan, refrigerator, 1 door and 2 doors, television, screen size up to or equal to 70 inch, lamp T5 and T8, self-ballasted CFL, single clad fluorescent and self-ballasted LED lamp, as well as incandescent. On your left, you can see we call it energy efficiency label that needs to be affixed to the equipment. And the minimum is 2 stars. So if you see any 1-star label in the market, please inform us, because that is illegal. Maximum is 5 stars. So we are promoting people to purchase 5-star and 4-star program label product through a program called SAFE, Sustainability Achieved via Efficiency, conducted by SEDA. 2 years ago, we have included washing machine as part of the appliances that to be regulated under MAPS. and we are looking forward to introduce 5 more appliances very soon. A study conducted with University Tenaga Nasional in 2016 or 2015, if I'm not mistaken, we have accumulated a savings of about 4,937 gigawatt hour of savings from 2013 to 2017. In monetary terms, is equivalent to RM 1.6 billion ringgit. Moving forward from 2018-2022, we expected to achieve about 8,659 gigawatt hour of saving, equivalent to 2.7 billion ringgit. And we are in the process of introducing 5 more, apart from washing machine, that is rice cooker, vacuum cleaner, microwave, clothes dryer, and oven, as part of the equipment that will be regulated under MAPS. Okay. All right. Now we move on to the policy action. Those two just now are the regulatory or legislation that we have with respect to enforcing energy efficiency in Malaysia. Now we move on to the policy sector, which is the biggest we have at the moment. And the most important is the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, or short for NEAP 2016-2025, is a 10-year plan to reduce about 52,233 gigawatt hour, which is 8% from 2014 baseline of savings, equivalent to a reduction of about 37,702 kiloton of CO2 cumulative in 10 years. We have a NEAP guiding principle, 4 of them: sustainable development, efficient use of energy, increased competitiveness and welfare, concerted participation. We also have 4 strategic thrusts, that is to implement energy efficiency plan, strengthen its framework, capacity development and training, establishment of sustainable funding mechanism, and promotion of private sector investment EE initiative. The NEAP key initiatives will cover equipment program, that is a promotion of 5-star rated appliances, and the enhancement of MAPS within those appliances that we have regulated and upcoming appliances that we tend to regulate. Then we have industrial program initiative, because industry sector is one of the most consuming of energy in Malaysia, which is energy audits and energy management in industries. And we also promote cogen because we see that it is an upcoming trend of generation of electricity and also other sources of fuel. We have buildings program initiative, which coincide with our event today, which is energy audits and energy management in buildings. And number 2, which we have been promoting, for example, demonstration of efficient buildings such as Energy Commission Diamond Building, Malaysian Green Tech Corporation near Zio Building, and also KKR2 Platinum Building under GVI, which is the energy efficient building design. Under the NEAP program, in order to promote those two just now, energy audits, management, industries, and in buildings, we have come up with what we call the Energy Audit Conditional Grant Program. In 2016, we received a funding from the government to actually provide grant to installation who is consuming a monthly consumption equal or more than 100,000 kilowatt hour. And what we do is that when they have registered with us to participate in the program, they must also appoint an ESCO, which is also registered under the Commission, to implement the audit. So these two must come together, and they must appoint a registered electrical energy manager if they are not subjected to the regulation. Successful applicant of EACG must implement all the measures recommended in the energy audit report with the ESCO that they have agreed upon within 3 years from the first year of the grant given to conduct the audit. The outcome of the program is that a total of 108 industrial installations participated with an average savings of 12% in 3 years, and 109 installations participated with an average savings of 18% in 3 years. We also have a
we have 1 more minute.
All right. We also have a program under the Government Lead by Example, where we retrofitted some government offices and hospitals. Okay. These are the outcome. Another outcome of the program is that we can identify which sectors in each industries and commercial sectors which are most consuming of energies, and the savings we achieve in terms of kilowatt hour and CO2 emission. We also have another funding under the 12th Malaysia Plan, that is 2021-2025, to conduct the same program, but only in industrial and commercial installation. What I wish to share with you is actually the BI implementation in government sector, where we have started labeling government building with this label, showing whether they are a 5-star or 1-star buildings. In terms of efficiency, we have started with a purpose-built office, and the unit is kilowatt-hour per year. These are the ratings that we have been approved by the government. And the total number of installations that we have labeled so far is 232 for government and 18 for private sector. The main reason for this is because 40% of energy and 70% of electricity are consumed by buildings, and we want to show that the government can do this thing through the government lead by example initiative. We'll not go through this. Way forward for E in Malaysia is I would like to focus on the policy and legal framework. We are currently in the process of drafting a new Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act in Malaysia, which will include electricity and thermal. Before this, we are focusing on electricity only. And we hope with this new act, we can cover more sectors in terms of energy efficiency in Malaysia. And we are now in the process of coming up with a new NIAP program, that is NIAP 2026-2025, that will focus on a new target of savings in 10 years' time to be achieved in 2035, which will include both electricity and thermal. This is something that I would like to share most of the time, that EE and RE is most important. You can imagine that the water is RE, and the water leaking from the bottle is all the holes that we can plug on if we do energy efficiency. And with that, that is my last slide, and I thank you for your kind attention. Back to you, Serena. Thank you.
Thank you, Umar, for that insight and the overarching view of what Suruhanjaya Tenaga has been set up to do. We will touch on the Q&A later on, so please, I invite all participants on here to, jot in a question if you have, and we'll cover that in the Q&A session. I'd like to introduce to you our second panelist, Architect Zulkifli Zahari, President of MESCO, which is the Malaysian Association of Energy Service Companies. A post he has held for the past 13 years. If nobody knows, most of you, I'm sure, would have met him at conference at every government seating. He's also a practicing green building facilitator and an electrical energy manager registered with Malaysia Energy Commission, one of the 1,045. Probably one of the first. At MESCO, he sits in various national steering committee as well as the project director for the Malaysian Industrial Energy Efficiency Improvement Project, the Building Sector Energy Efficiency Project, BSIP, as well as the forthcoming Efficiency and Conservation Act to be enacted by the Malaysian government. We'll come to that later as to when that will be. He has over the years developed MESCO as the main training provider for certified courses in energy management, energy auditor and management verification recognized by the Malaysian government. He is also the founder and managing director of ZET Corporation and ESCO, which is part of the diversified Z group of companies. Architect Zul, over to you.
Thank you, Serena. Thank you for having me, everybody. But before I begin, I just want to say something which I think Sheikh Zul Omar may not be able to say. But he has mentioned about the numbers of registered energy managers numbering almost 1,500. But in truth is only about 30% is practicing. And out of that 2,000 facilities, perhaps we can see that capacity building is something that's very, very critical in energy efficiency. The other thing that probably he cannot mention is that after 12 years, this only energy efficiency regulation that we have in our country up to now, only 60% compliance, yeah, and because of probably difficulty in terms of enforcement, and I've not heard anybody who's been penalized for not complying. But I think we need to know. It's a very difficult situation for Cik Zul Omar, so because I think he's quite understaffed. I'm sorry, Cik Zul, but I think we just need people to actually understand the situation, because it's quite relevant to my presentation. So proceeding with my presentation, I'm offering a roadmap, a scenario, possible scenario, in order for us to reach 20.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Sorry. By 2050, and how buildings can contribute to that. Next slide, please. First 3 slides is just to recap what energy efficiency is all about. Yeah, it's to do with design, retrofitting, in order for us to use optimum energy, right? Whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, transportation, and the utility sector. It means that you are using less energy to do the same level of work, and it applies to home, building designs, industries, equipment, and vehicles. Next, please. And technology is very advanced today. Technology in EE, whether you're talking about air conditioning, whether you're talking about lighting, control system, building management system, they've come to the level of high-tech Internet of Things. We can have lifts who knows that a certain office in a certain floor is coming for tea in a canteen on the 2nd floor and wait for the people to come down. That kind of level of energy management system that we have today. So many new buildings are incorporating those aspects in their designs. Next, please. Next slide, please. This slide, I wish to try and explain the importance and how energy efficiency contribute to reduction of greenhouse gas. We know that in Malaysia, 50%, more than 50% is still coal, and more than 30% is gas. What that means is more than 80% of our fuel source is still fossil fuels. And if you look at this diagram, when in this case is representing a coal station, you put 100 units of energy fuel in there, and it goes through our transmission systems and distribution system. But even before it does that, to convert coal into electricity, you already suffer 70% losses. And then it goes through our meters and into our factories and into our homes, and we may have inefficient equipment, we may have inefficient systems, and at the end of the 100 units that we put in, there is a likelihood that you only receive 9.5% of the original energy input in order to for the end user to use. So now, what does energy efficiency do? When the end is 9.5, you try to reduce it to 8.5. And if you do a reverse mathematical calculation, you will find that the reduction of 1 unit will produce more than 10 units of energy savings at the source, meaning to say the 100 units has become only less than 90. And if we now save 1 unit at every point, including the energy, into the power station itself, you are looking into 40% reduction, meaning to say the 100 units have become only 60 units. So what that means is, if you compare with RE, which replaces energy produced by power plants 1-to-1, if you reduce energy by 1 kilowatt hour, you are looking into a multiple amount of energy saved, where it can be used in other places. So if our installation, total installation in our country, which is about more than 30,000 megawatts, if everybody does just even 5 or 10%, it means we can actually save, maybe we can shut down even 2 or defer the implantation of new power stations, at least 2 of them, if that is ever possible. Next, please. So Cik Zul Omar has already informed. I started my EE activities being the project director of MIIP. I would say that it's a very successful project, and of course the EMIR, we do not know whether it will be replaced after 2022. The BSIP, that's the only project that is focused on buildings, and NEP, and now the long-awaited EENC Act. That has been on the table for the past 10 years. So for whatever reasons, we need to hope that this comes as soon as possible. Of course, got the other government initiatives in terms of green building tools is MyCREST. And on the private initiatives, we have GBI and of course RE. And all of them, all these building tools, they emphasize of energy efficiency as the biggest points in order to get your ratings. Next, please. So in general, what are the strategies we need to do for new buildings, in terms of EE strategies? And in doing so, we will achieve low operating costs. First on my list is compulsory mandatory adoption of MS 1525, or a selected green building, which of course embedded in it will be a MS 1525 too. Number 2, we need financial and tax incentives to boost market demand. And of course, when you have a lot of buildings with low carbon, of course, then you can lower the carbon in buildings. The next one is, of course, enhancement of capacity building. As I was saying just now, we may have the legal framework and so on, but if we do not have capacity building, we do not have the experts in place, because they have their own language in terms of EE, then the progress of energy efficiency will not be as fast as we would like it. Public awareness is of course very important, and awards and recognition would also help boost the interest to go green. Next, please. So for existing buildings is the same again. We focus of buildings that are large consumers, of course, like large complexes with long operating hours. So first thing again is the same, mandatory building performance standards. We have to have it mandatory. Next is to promote and introduce high performance EE technology, because their existing buildings may not have these components in. You have to boost the number of quality in EE retrofits, meaning to say it is easily replicable, and the more projects that happens, probably the prices also in order to do the retrofits can be more competitive. And we have to provide low financing tax incentives to building owners to boost retrofits. And where I come from, I would like to promote energy performance contracting for ESCOs and for large installations especially, because ESCOs provide a solution to existing building owners for a zero upfront cost in order to implement energy efficiency in their buildings, because the money comes from ESCOs. And then, of course, the same thing, public awareness and awards and recognition is also equally important.
Architect Zul?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes left.
My gosh. So, so we have building policies, and we have we need to have the building policies. Okay, these are the 3 components of anything that we want to promote in the country. We need the policies in place. We need the business models. The business models of energy efficiency in building would be energy performance contracting and green buildings. And when this is being facilitated, mechanism of finance and the projects will be more viable, and the bank will certainly be attracted. Next, please. So the need for a dedicated energy efficiency regulation is because we need a specific implementing agency. We need to collect data. We need to have energy labeling. We need to comply with prescribed energy building intensity, building audits, reporting, penalties. Next, please. And the expertise we need is more energy managers, green building specialists, energy auditors, monitoring and verification specialists, ESCO development programs, risk assessment for financial institutions, for EPC, because the banks do not understand EPC, do not know how to manage the risk. Next, please. So the methodology of deriving the roadmap is, of course, the strategies that we have spoken about, compiling the building information is the next one, establishing the milestones and the key actions required for the milestones, monitoring and progressing the milestones, and then evaluation and reviews necessary to meet the milestones with considerations of the existing technologies as well as the energy supply market and the level of compliance. Next, please. My last slide. This alone will take 15 minutes, but I won't take that long. So the most important thing that we need to emphasize now is to establish this EENC Act. It has been years overdue. So we hope that it will come up. And below the Act, we need to establish the building regulation and enforce it. And we need to do some preparation in order to facilitate or to get the benchmarking of the various categories of the buildings. Of course, overall, throughout this period, we need to carry on with reviewing of this regulation in order for us to see how effective it is being done and implemented. And over the time, we need to, of course, enforce this regulation. The other thing that I want to point out in this roadmap is that there will be hopefully the liberalization of this renewable energy supply industry, where we can even buy straight from the solar producers direct, in order for us, for the buildings for buildings to use renewable energy direct from the solar farms. But however, it is being mothballed for the time being. So anyway, I would like to say that the most important thing is we have to have this regulation, and when regulation comes into place, then everything will come together. The building approvers will also be able to do their work in order to understand what is required to approve green buildings and energy management, and we can speak the same language in order to make sure that we succeed in achieving zero emission by 2050. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Zul from MESCO, for giving us your point of view in terms of the roadmap ahead that we need to do. We've listened to two speakers and panelists on the EE sector. However, I'd like to introduce now our third panelist, Davis Chong, President of MPIA, which is the President of the Malaysian Photovoltaic Industry Association, a very dynamic and growing association. Serving in the MPIA committee for 2 terms, Davis has continued driven the solar industry in Malaysia for together members. Also the group CEO and one of the forming members of SolarVest Holdings Berhad, with extensive marketing and corporate experience from former employment in multinational companies. Davis has continuously implemented EPCC strategic commercial plans for the solar market in Malaysia, including grid-tied, off-grid system and self-consumption model in the business segment from rooftop to utility-scale solar. Thank you, Davis. Over to you.
Thank you, Serena. Hi, I hope everyone can see my slides, and thank to Zulkifli slides and a great presentation from both IAR, Joe also. So I think I'm gonna go a bit faster. So look at the time that we control. Okay, I'm gonna bring you through the how MPIA, that how could we map our solar energy roadmap towards 2050 readiness, right? So let's get into the background. What is the energy consumption model that we have to the end users in at home? That you can see that a lot of energy that we spend on lighting and also any temperature control to do with the washing machine, washing appliances, cooking, or even refrigerator. So those are the major activity that consume energy. I think we discussed about that with Zoe also. So if we're looking into how can we how these activities that impacted the net the fossil energy that we are using. So look at the graph, look at the pictures that we have. Every 100 watts light bulbs that we use, 876 kilowatt hour of energy per year, that consume actually 225 kg of coal that to use to generate the electricity. So it gives you an idea that how much of coal you consume for every bulb. And you can imagine that with our daily life that we are using energy, what kind of fossil carbon footprint that we have done to the environment. Okay, with that, I think we can see that, okay, why there's a climate change agreement that being signed on 2016. What are efforts that we're building politically in globally that from 2015 to 2020. So from 2015, we start to talk about the buying the international agreement on Paris Agreement. The 196 parties agree to trigger a wave of carbon neutrality, that all the countries put up commitment to do that. And 2017, Sweden became the first country to legislating the law to achieve carbon neutral by 2045. Subsequently, a lot of countries following that as well. And 2020, I think that's one of the big things happen is when Joe Biden won in the elections, they bring USA back to the Paris Agreement, and China pledged carbon neutrality by 2060, and Japan pledged carbon neutrality by 2050. So those are the big milestone, big breakthrough that we have on the carbon net zero towards 2050. Okay, with that in the political itself, all the countries' effort. So what are the effort from private sectors that we have seen? I think a lot of companies that you observed that they pledge to carbon neutral, to reduce carbon emissions, to fight against climate change, and also to build a better business reputations for the company as well. So some of the companies already, and a lot of companies already commit to RE100, which I believe now maybe is around 260 to 300 members in the RE100 globally. So you can see all the big names, Petronas from Malaysia, IBM, FedEx, Amazon, Microsoft, Maybank, Starbucks, BP, Bosch, all this company already commit to carbon neutrality or RE100 to maybe some in 2030, some in 2040, and towards 2050. Okay, and what are Malaysia doing on this, and what's Malaysia target and the programs that related to this? So with this, we actually commit to reduce 45 carbon emission up to 2030. That's how we want to do it. And we also commit to 31% of renewable energy in power generation mix in 2025. And I think we move forward 39% in 2035, or around 40%. So with that, what are we doing on the RE itself? We do FIT program, we do large scale solar program, we do NEM net energy metering program, and also we do Celco program. All these programs are being managed and being approved by energy commissions. Okay, so we move to see what are the countries are most advanced in driving renewable energy right now. So look at the capacity. Of course, we look at China, that they have about 250 gigawatt being implemented, and then following by European Union, US, Japan, and Germany. So those are the countries that they already commit to their carbon neutral target by 2050. So this is a big commitment that a country that they commit to. And with the capacity per capita, watt per capita that we're seeing, Australia is the highest with 795 for watt person for watt per capita, and followed by Germany and Japan. Okay, these are the countries that they are implementing renewable energy from globally. So we can see Honduras, Australia, Germany, Greece, Spain, and most of the European countries. They are very advanced in adopting RE, and I think Malaysia, we still can catch up more with the policies that we have now up towards 2025 or towards 2035 to climb up in the ladder of RE adoptions. Okay, we jump to what are the trends that we can do? How could we change in terms of buildings or architectures to contribute to RE adoptions? So we can see from the development in globally in Australia, in Germany, in Japan, and in US particularly. So a lot of buildings, buildings for household, for commercial industrial already have a lot of laws and also adoptions on renewable energy. So example, in Japan, they already have every houses and apartment built in after 2040, they will need to have a solar panel system. They will need to have RE energy contributions into the consumptions. So the California state also set a mandate to new building code that require new constructions home to have solar PV system. So as an electricity source. So that's proven that some of the country already taken a big step into regulations, into setting it into a mandatory for new building constructions to adopt renewable energy or solar energy. Okay, so with that kind of adoptions or policy making in the countries, so what are the things that we can expecting the private sectors can adopt, can take advantage of? So with that kind of policy, actually a lot of property developers, example like this is happening in St. Louis City in US, that they can actually set a new to build new constructions with solar PV system ready. So what does it mean by solar ready houses? So it means that before we design and build the houses, we consider effective rooftop solar design considerations that we call it in layman, sometimes we call it in passive solar design, to have minimum rooftop shading or no rooftop shading that it block the sunlight, to have a big or continuous roof space to allow more solar panels to install, to have all this electrical conduit to the roof to get it ready, and to have right size electrical panels to generate the electricity that household will need. Typically, example like Malaysia, each household will need about 6 kilowatt to 8 kilowatt of capacity for a normal double story houses.
Davis?
Yep.
We have 2 more minutes.
Okay, that's gonna go fast. Okay, we have about from the house, then we have we need to move on to 100% solar power building. So Japan then it launched a first building to have 100% solar. Then after that, we have also 100% solar power grid. So this is important development on enabling solar into our grid or even our buildings. Okay, with that comparison, you can see that 25 million Australian population, Germany 83 million population, but they have millions of buildings with solar. But Malaysia with 32 million of population, we only have 20,000 of buildings with solar. So we have much more to catch up on that. Okay, these are the potentials of buildings that we can put into solar in Malaysia. 3.2 million of residential houses, and of course 5,000 government buildings, and a lot of other shop lots and factories as well. Okay, probably I will skip this. And what I want to talk about next is we're gonna grow battery storage to cope with the RE. So with this kind of reference, that you can see that with the RE capacity go towards 2030 to double to probably 200 gigawatt hour in 2030. In 100 gigawatt, and actually the doubling towards 2030 will become 200. And in the high side, if this is really going well with the policy, with the private sectors, it potentially will go into 400 gigawatt hour. So this is important for RE to grow, and also go with the acceleration from storage as well, that both sector will grow together. Okay, how power sector transformations. So this is the benefits from adding storage into a solar energy system. It will actually reduce renewable energy curtailment. It will help on the system operation to be more efficient for the power transmission. We talked about power loss just now, and also do investment deferral. So all these benefits are the benefits that we're adding storage into renewable energy system. By how we're going to enable it, we're going to reduce upfront costs from the financial institutions. We're going to have conducive regulatory framework from the policymaker. Of course, we need to have a lot of pilot projects to prove that this technology works. Okay, so I jump a bit more details on the technical part that we talking about just now, how storage can actually help on this. So in system operations, storage can help on frequency regulations, flexible ramping, and black start services. Black start services is the backup services when we have blackout in the power stations. So storage will greatly help on this compared to the backup power plant that we use to standby, which is a waste of resources. And it also can postpone or defer your investment on big power plant when the energy consumptions, peak consumptions is getting increased. Of course, one of the biggest advantage that adding storage into it is to reduce RE curtailment. It will greatly add solar or wind capacity when we have storage combined together. And also it will help in mini grids or for those locations that we need to have off-grid solar to enable electricity as well. Okay, finally, I go to challenges and solutions that we have. And I think the first challenges that we have is to enable higher solar energy adoption. We need more utility scale power generations and of course rooftop as well. But now we actually need TMB and ST to actually to have more clear guide roadmap for us to open up rooftop solar or actually LSS on utility solar. And also government, we hope the government policy will be clear and with really long-term roadmap to lift restrictions and to enable more buildings to install with solar system. Example, now some of the buildings we only can install 1 megawatt, and some of the self-consumptions capacity, and we have some restrictions to do it as well. So, and the third one, solar energy generations can only happen during daytime, and it can be greatly affected by sky, which when cloudy or raining. So energy storage or utility storage is the only option or the one great option we have to enable more renewable energy, which is the problem of renewable energy is intermittent supply. So, but currently the cost is still high, and we hope that more developed country enable to add into economical scale, then it will reduce the cost, just like how it happens with solar panels price. And lastly, the hybrid generation with different renewable energy source, solar, hydro, sometime I think with biogas will be greatly to explore to provide stable power supply, which is all renewable energy combinations to the grid, and also and to the behind meter supply as well. I think this is all the RE part that we can develop on architecture and constructions to help us to achieve 2050 net carbon neutrality. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Davis, for the insight to MPI and the new targets that we're heading to. Last and not least, I would like to invite Ong Pang Yen from Sunway Property. This is an important portion because we see in terms of the overall context, its impact within the built environment, within our townships and our cities. And Ong is currently the Sunway Group's Executive Director in the Chairman's Office, overseeing group brand marketing communication, group sustainability, and the ESG agenda, as well as the Jeffrey Chia Foundation, the largest education-focused social enterprise in Malaysia. If all of you don't know, Sunway is probably one of the lead in terms of ESG and adoption of ESG, and it's leading the way in terms of their township development in going green and low carbon. Ong served also in the Malaysia Public Works Department for 8 years before joining Sunway Group as a resident engineer in Seberang Jaya Town Centre, but moved very actively up towards Sunway Group's pioneer overseas investment projects across Cambodia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Australia, India, China, which gives him a much bigger global picture in terms of what is happening. In 2015, he was appointed the Executive Director of Monash University, Malaysia, and in 2012, the Managing Director of Property Development International Sunway Property. So without waiting any longer, Pang Yen, if we can pass to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Serena, for this opportunity to share the Sunway experience. I'm mindful of the time, so I will move very quickly. I think we are talking about reducing operational carbon in the built environment, and for my sharing, the built environment actually would be in the form of a township, all right, rather than to be building centric, and therefore we are talking about ecosystem and we are talking about township infrastructure. I think this is very, everybody has spoken about this, but I just want to say that, you know, the nation, as we have heard from Davis as well, has committed to 45% reduction in terms of a greenhouse gas emission by 2030, using the 2005 figures as a benchmark. What that means is that if back in 2005, we emit 900 kilogram of carbon dioxide for the production of 1 ton of cement. In 2005, if every ton of cement production emits 900 kg of carbon dioxide, then by 2030, that 900 kg should drop to 500 kg. That is essentially what it meant, the commitment of a 45% reduction in intensity. And how are we going to get there, whether it's voluntary or by compulsion? That is what we are deliberating and what it is up for discussion, really. Note that in this slide, starting 2024, countries will have to report transparently on their commitment, on their nationally determined commitment towards carbon reduction at the international forum. And this is where I think governments will have to really now lay out their plans and what they have achieved so far. So there is a report card that is going to be demanded of governments. It's not just commitment, you have to really tell what you are going to do. As far as contribution towards carbon neutrality, I think we all know CO2 is accumulating dangerously in the atmosphere, and if we want to help reduce that dangerous situation, there are actually about 3 ways. Number one is to reduce carbon emission. I think energy efficiency in terms of buildings, all these are very direct reduction approaches. What I want to share later is the more indirect one from the carbon, from the township perspective, the importance of low carbon city. The second way, of course, is to substitute the dirtier energy source with the cleaner energy source. The cleanest is probably renewable energy like solar, but there are other energy sources that are also cleaner than the current coal-fired power generation that our country utilizes a lot. And you will see that reduction alone, as far as scientists are concerned, may not be good enough. You will need to also have carbon capture and sequestration of CO2. All right, so these are the 3 ways. Reduction, I won't touch on it. I think Green RE, Green Building Index, Green Building Council doing fantastic work, and we have heard in terms of energy efficiency for buildings, how it would reduce CO2 emission. The indirect one from the township perspective, if we get it right, I think there will be a significant impact in carbon emission. You know, we have in Sunway City about 5.4 kilometers of covered elevated walkways, and we are studying how this is contributing towards carbon neutrality. You know, just to give you an example, At the moment, I think it is about 20% utilization rate on some stretches, 30% utilization rate on some stretches, and we can calculate actually the reduction in terms of these short car trips within the city will contribute to about 300 tons in terms of CO2 reduction. But if we can raise the utilization rate to 80-90%, then it would be like 1,000 tons of CO2 emission. Just to illustrate, back in Monash, Malaysia, I was there for a short while, 4 years actually. In 2018, we were sitting down with Grab cars, and I was actually quite surprised and alarmed that they reported Monash University Grab cars pick up and drop off is about 30,000 a day. It's a huge amount, and a huge proportion of these Grab cars are actually short trips within Sunway City. So imagine if we can promote walkability through all these comfortable walkways, the amount of cars that we can take away from the roads would be quite tremendous, and that's how it is contributing to a CO2 reduction. Mass rapid transit, I think we are all quite clear. If we can move more people, consume less energy, I think it will help in the reduction of CO2. Our estimate is about 1,000 tons annually. We are using electric bus, So these are, if we can get our act right, low carbon city is going to play a very significant role towards carbon neutrality, and we were very honored that CASA, Ministry of Environment, recognized Sunway City as a low carbon city. We were given diamond recognition just earlier this year in April. Of course, GBI also recognized Sunway City as a green township. What I wanted to actually emphasize here, is for us to imagine, a city or a township whereby more than 50% of the residents just walk to work, walk to the university, walk to schools, and 80% of them don't have to really move beyond the city boundaries to attend to their daily needs. They are going to clinics, going to the market, and so on and so forth. Now, if you can imagine that, then you can imagine that the residents in the township, as far as their average mileage per year, their car mileage per year, I would imagine would be less than half of those who are living in dedicated residential precinct, because in a dedicated residential precinct, you have to drive out for almost everything. And if it is going to be like less than half, instead of 30-40,000 kilometers, it's just 15 to 20,000 kilometers, you can imagine the impact in terms of carbon reduction. All right, so that is, if we are able to get all this right, the importance of integration, the importance of connectivity. Substitution, again, is very clear-cut. We have to walk the talk. I think Davis has made a very clear point there. We have put up a lot of solar panels. It is an avoidance of about 5,000 tons of CO2 annually. Even the elevated walkways, they are all on the roof, all these PV cells there. All right. These are just some pictures to show the commitment. This is our Sunway Medical Center. You can see PV cells up there, Sunway Pyramid PV cells. This is our hostel. You see, we are building hostel not just for students, but also for our nurses and for our Sunway employees. That is driving towards the target I've just mentioned, to have as much of our residents actually working within the integrated development. That is going to be a very significant contribution to CO2 reduction. Substitution, just to share this chart, you will see on the right-hand side, TND, in terms of energy that is generated, for every megawatt hour of energy, it emits about 0.69, 0.7 tons of CO2. All right, solar energy, of course, is very clean. LPG is also, less than half of what TNB and electricity generation is emitting, diesel, fuel oil. So in terms of substitution, we must also look for alternative energy sources. This chart is taken from our Sunway Sustainability Report, and you can see, as a group, we consume quite a lot, 460,000 megawatt hour. And if we just rely on solar panels on rooftop in a built environment, I think at most you can achieve maybe 5%, substitution. So therefore, the nation needs to move towards a large-scale solar farms. I think at the moment, probably it is about 10 to 13% of the total energy that is produced. They say it's going to be 31% eventually. So large-scale solar farm has an important role to play moving forward.
Mr.
Now,
Ong?
Yeah,
we need to wrap up real quick.
Oh, that's very fast. Sequestration, is another thing. But what I wanted to say here now is that, the planting of trees is the easiest way for carbon sequestration. In Sunway, we have 30,000 trees planted. Each tree has 6 kilowatt cooling power, which is equivalent to 2 small air conditioning units. So we have to look at it from this angle. It's not just carbon sequestration, but it is also lowering ambient temperature for the city, and you can imagine for yourself how this is going to impact CO2 reduction. Now, why I say brace for zero? Because there will be a lot of global pressure, and we need to take a sensible approach. Now, Malaysia, a sensible approach, because in Malaysia, if we are under a lot of pressure and under a lot of desperation and urgency, sometimes we may swing to one extreme, and then the approach may not be very rational. In the world, you will see that a lot of governments are already implementing carbon tax to dissuade people from CO2 emission, just like the 45%. What if you are not 45% reduction in your intensity in the production of your materials and your products, whether the tax will come and affect you or not. Be imposed by government. Singapore already imposed carbon tax 5 Singapore dollar per ton. But if you look at what the international body is recommending, it is USD 135 per ton of carbon tax by 2030. So this is the stick approach. All right, this is the stick approach. Now, why I say in Malaysia we need to adopt a very sensible approach, and it's because actually, if you ask me, how should Malaysia commit to net zero, I would say not much of a problem. If you look at this chart, below this line here is absorption. In Malaysia, we are blessed with a lot of forest, so we can absorb a lot of CO2. Above this line is the CO2 GHG emission. All right, this orange patch is the energy sector. Energy is TNB, electricity generation, as well as transport cars. So you will see that if we want to tackle net zero emission, we must focus on areas that has the greatest impact. All right, that are removal of cars and substitution and of TNB coal-fired plant. Those are the one that is going to give a significant impact. If you look at this red line, this is the net emission by the country. We are only net emitter of CO2 starting 2005, and this red line is not very high. So if we can achieve what the government is going to do in terms of renewable energy, I think this line can easily drop to zero, and so we are already net zero. But it is global pressure that we are talking about. You may be net zero, the international developed countries may say that's not good enough. They may still compel you to bring it further down to be negative emission because they are hugely, positive emission. Industrialized country will have a very tough time trying to bring it down to net zero. Whether they will play fair is the key question, and how the government should approach this is a very important thing. That's why there's a proposal for ASEAN, to come together to tackle this issue of net zero emission. All right, so it's global pressure, national measures. What I want to say here is that, I think the industry, property and construction industry can ill afford all these tax, I think there are many considerations that we have to take into account. Already we know affordable housing is a big challenge already. The property that we are building is already beyond the reach of majority of our population. So if the government were to adopt a carrot approach and impose tax, I think this may not be a very wise way forward. So the way forward, I would recommend, is if the industry were to take this up with the government, is to go for the incentive, the carrot approach. All right, if you do the right thing, reward. If you do the wrong thing, okay lah, you can tax, but better to use the incentive approach to encourage ourselves towards this net zero objective for Malaysia, and then we have to see how to deal with the international pressure. So I think my time is up. So I'll pass this time back to Serena.
Thank you, Pang Yen. Interesting to end with carbon tax or no carbon tax. I think that was in the last discussion on the Roundtable 1-2. I hope you still stay with us because we have about 15 questions. Some of them have, I think 2 or 3 of them have been answered in the chat group. So we'll do a quick Q&A. And then we will do a 2-question poll, and then we also would like your policy feedbacks later on, which you can actually email to us to be collated. And so I'd like to just start off some of the easy questions to IR Zul. Do registered energy managers have a KPI for ensuring energy reduction?
I think I have answered directly to the person, but it's okay. Well,
okay.
they do not have. If you're looking from the perspective of regulation, they do not have a KPI in terms of reduction. But when they are serving a particular installation, they will do an energy audit, and the reduction will be based upon what the energy audit report has recommended. So normally they will follow according to the flow of first no cost, low cost measures, medium cost, and then high investment cost. So that depends on the owner on what sort of reduction level that they wanted to achieve. Thank you.
The next question is, will the federal government consider introducing EE targets, perhaps sectorial targets? This is from Shinwei. This is interesting to know because Penang Green Council is setting up targets and at the PBT levels in each sector. So they're interested to know about this. Maybe you could let us know, and whether the EE Act will come out before the COP26, as it's been delayed. So I'm hooking that question in at the same time.
Okay. Okay. A target.
Yes.
Well, our regulations that we created, the email regulation in 2008. One of the examples that we follow is the Japanese Act on EENC. In the beginning, in the Japan's EENC Act, they have a target of 1% reduction annually by installations subjected to the Act. But eventually they abandon that they do not enforce that particular segment, because asking 1% for industry to reduce, meaning ringgits in terms of cost of investment, in terms of energy saving measures or retrofitting, which none of us actually know in each sector of industry, for example, cement or steel or manufacturing, what will be the exact cost that they need to spend in order to achieve that 1% reduction. So based on that, we do not put that in our regulation, because when we did our stakeholders consultation for EECA, the same thing has been raised, that it'll be quite costly, and we know EE is expensive. EE is not cheap, it's expensive. For example, in terms of auditing alone, we know that if you want to audit industrial installation, it will cost you around 70,000 ringgit average. One audit session. For commercial, it'll be about 40 to 50,000. Arzul can confirm this. So it is not just audit alone, it's not expensive. Imagine you have to do retrofitting for chillers and motors and so on and so forth. So that is the reason why we do not have that. And sorry, the second question just now is EECA. Okay, sorry. Well, it is entirely not within our control, because the Act must go through so many channels, such as it has to be vetted by the Attorney General Chambers first, by the drafters, and so on and so forth. That could take quite some time. My experience from the last regulation that we did some amendment, it takes us about, I think, almost a year just to finalize the draft before we can put up a paper to the cabinet, get approval, and so on and so forth. So yeah, but we do have a target to have it presented, or to have it as a first reading in the parliament at the final session of parliamentary session this year. That is our target. So hopefully we can achieve that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to touch on something else before I come back to the EE and RE element. And I think there's a misconception that it is only EE when we cover energy efficiency, only covers all the active systems with regards to buildings. The industry currently focuses heavily in active strategies. Why is this so? And what does Malaysia use to prioritize passive design strategies over active? I'll just start that question, and then I'm going to pose it to AR Zulkifli. The first part is green building tools. 45% of it is about passive design. It's about the thermal quality of the building envelope. You don't get that right. It's a bit like going out into the tropical environment without, in Sri Lanka, everyone goes out with an umbrella because of the heat. In Malaysia, probably we used to do it 20 years ago. Now we just walk out in the sun, or we don't. We drive out, essentially. So the first point is passive design is really quite important, and the building envelope plays a big factor in this. And whilst we have the MS 1525 and the Uniform Building Bylaws adopt OTTV, only 4 states have adopted it, and no other states have adopted that as the first point. But Architect Zul, maybe you have the industry currently focusing heavily in active strategies. What's your point of view there?
Well, in my recommendation in my roadmap, I did mention, which unfortunately I was not able to spend a little bit more time on it, is that in the regulation, in the building regulation, we should also mandate the building to adopt a green rating tool. When you talk about green rating tool, automatically the passive side will also be taken into account for new buildings especially. So it is my recommendation that if you have this new regulation, we have to follow what Singapore did, that the buildings must be certified too, and therefore passive designs will also be taken into serious consideration. In fact, that's the first consideration that you have to do above even energy efficiency.
Okay, thank you very much. A question from Hazar. Our target is 2050 for net zero carbon. What about developed nation targets such as USA, EU? Is it by 2030, 2025? Anyone here can answer that question? So,
well, as far as my thinking about it is, if you cannot measure something, you cannot manage it. So the reason why we should have targets, and even in my recommendations too, I have actually allotted targets along the way. And if we're talking about zero targets, then Malaysia also must look at it seriously on how we can achieve those targets. I know it's very difficult, like Cik Zul Omar has said, we put targets, but at the end of the day, it is not achievable. But it's better to have targets and not achieve than not to have targets at all. So my recommendation is we should have targets. After all, we're talking about zero by 2050. If that is actually a quantifiable target. So if we are seriously hoping that our grandchildren and our chuchus and chichets do not blame us, then we have to look at it very seriously in how to mitigate problems along the way in order to meet the targets. So that's my take.
Thank you.
Sorry, Serena.
Yes.
Yeah, we take the last question because we need to close soon and do the final poll.
Okay. Last question is, would decentralizing the grid network approach by state levels, regional districts, eventually to individual localities be considered?
Can I take that question too?
Okay, yes.
Well, we had My Power, which was disbanded recently. I don't know why. But My Power is all about liberalization of the energy supply industry. where consumers are given a choice which energy to buy. Just like we want to buy our mobile phones, which operator do we want to use. So I believe that is a very important consideration, because energy through RE we get closer, lower and lower. And the idea about liberalizing this supply of energy is in order for the big solar farms to use third-party access in order to sell direct to those facilities, especially during the day. And we do not know, maybe the the battery technology would have improved tremendously by then, where we can also store the batteries in order to use even off daylight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will leave, there's a question, Davis, perhaps you can answer in the chat itself. With the solar PVs being installed in buildings, is there a plan to manage PV waste in the future? And is this part of the roadmap? If I can ask you just to answer that question in the meeting chat, and we can move on to the online poll number 2,
Sure.
part of the event. Should Malaysia introduce a minimum energy efficiency requirement for new buildings, energy saving target for 2030 from a 2019 baseline? The question is a little bit shorter, of course, in the Q&A here. Why we mentioned 2019 baseline is the MS 1525 has been upgraded, and the baseline for buildings in the intensity has dropped. It's, in a sense, it's become stricter. So the first question was, this is question number 4. The first question was the one before. The second question is, should there be fiscal incentives for energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings? Yes, no, or should it be market driven? So there are 2 questions there, and we welcome your feedback on that. And whilst we're waiting for the poll results, I put this analogy out there for everyone, and this very point, the measured parts per million of CO2 in the air in 2019 was 409, above the 400 line. In 2020, start of the pandemic and everything supposedly slowed down, it still went up to 413. In 2021, it is at 417. It is going up at a percentage of 1% every year, despite clear blue skies outside there. What it means is the effects of what we have been doing still taking its toll, and that's the reason to look at stricter control as we move to 2030 target. Okay, let's see what we have with regards to the first question. Should we introduce a minimum energy efficiency requirement for new buildings from a 2019 baseline instead of the 2007 baseline or 2004? Question 1, this is question 2 that's up on the screen. So have we got the results, Melissa?
Yeah, we have 50%, sorry, 67% answered 50% by 2030, coming from 31 responses. Only 20% for 30% by 2030, and beyond 50% by 2030, we have only 6 responses for that.
Okay, thank you. And for the second poll, may we get most of our candidate participants to press on the poll so we can get a big better pool.
Yes, we got 85% said yes, and
Okay.
only 1% said no. However, there are 13% should be market driven.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. As part of closing this session, before we close, I would just like to ask, in summary, a policy that's important to each one of the panelists here. Just one policy that you feel is really, really important, and then we can summarize this roundtable session. Thank you very much. So I'd like to ask panelist one, Zul,
Yes.
from Suruhanjaya Tenaga. Since you are on the inside, what would you give as a policy, despite being in Suruhanjaya Tenaga? What would you see as a policy that would actually push this agenda forward?
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, we have two policies that we need to adhere to. One is national and one is regional. There is a meeting attended by the Ministers of Energy for ASEAN called ASEAN Ministers Energy Meeting, held every year, discussing about all types of energy sectors, and they have a plan called ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation 2016-2025, and then we'll have another one 2026-2035 and all that. And we have to be involved in the implementation of that plan under ASEAN. And for that, we have our own national plan, which is now currently NEAP, National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, which is focusing on reducing 50,000 gigawatt hour. The sad thing is that since the beginning, we only focus on electricity, when other ASEAN member states, for example, Thailand or Singapore, has been focusing on basically all spectrum of energy, which the units they use no longer kilowatt hour, but KTOE or gigajoule. So we need to move from that to a much better, much bigger scope of target. We are actually, with the coming of EECA, planning to convene a stakeholders consultation to start discussing about our new target from 2016 to 2026 to 2035. So we have 3 or 4 more years to go. So we need to really sit down and discuss what will be our the activities that we need to have. But as of now, the net zero emission target, I think if it goes through, is the best that we have. Except that I think you guys know what it means by net zero. That means that Malaysia must be able to produce the same amount of energy that to generate the same amount. Okay, sorry, it's for building easier. The building must be able to generate the same amount of energy they use from the grid. That means it's zero rise, net zero. Even now, our Japan counterpart, who's involved with net zero emission of buildings in Japan, are saying that if we can get to 30%, it is good enough already for us, because we are way far away from Japan in order to achieve our target. So that is based on our experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Zul. Well, 30% there and 40% in energy efficiency design makes it already 70%. So I think that's the way we should go forward. Zul, may I get one policy, if you were to see a policy go through, what would that be? Let's make it short. I'm going to jump
to it is already reflected in my presentation. It is to push for the long delayed act. Hopefully we can have it latest by next year, so that the building regulation can follow after that. That is my take.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Davis, any last policy or strong policy that you feel can work in tandem? I think he's frozen.
Yeah, of course. I think the policy that we keep on talking about this few years is a TPA, like mentioned by Zul, and I hope that Zulkifli from SD, that you're able to influence your colleagues in SD, that just give us TPA. That will actually give us a lot of space to really give more renewable energy in the market. The market has much more appetite to take it. Just give us the TPA. Thank you.
Agree.
Kang Yen, I think on the very big picture of the effects, what policy can actually move developers in the direction of the uptake of green buildings and operational targets, carbon reduction?
Yeah, thank you very much. I always feel like the odd one out here, because policies I'm not very sure, but as a as a business, as a developer, as a property person, we are talking about sustainability. You need to remain profitable to be realistic. Yeah. So sustainability means there must be demand and supply. So the best thing that can happen is to raise the awareness of the public so that they demand green buildings. They want green buildings, then developers are very happy to give them green buildings. But why do they want green buildings? That is where we have to look from the policy angle. If they buy green buildings, will there be any incentive? Will the assessment be lower and things like that? So we need to create this kind of a demand, public demand for the products. And then as a business, we can supply, and then the whole ecosystem is sustainable.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to pass to Nick to summarize this session for today.
Thank you, Serena. And also to our speakers, Zulkifli Umar, Zulkifli Zahari, Davis Chong, and Ong Pang Yen for that insightful session. We'll get the speakers to answer all the unanswered questions and share with the attendees via email and blog spots on CGM and Green RE websites. Okay, so would like, since the program draws to an end, may I please invite everyone for a quick group photo for those, if you could turn on your camera so that we can get a group photo of everyone here today. Okay.
Please.
Okay. Okay, so is everyone ready on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I got it. Looking good, everyone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizing team, please allow me to say thank you once again to Datuk Sri Johan Raslan, Serena, and our speakers, Zulkifli Umar, Zulkifli Zahari, Davis Chong, and Ong Pang Yen for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your insights and views. The same goes to the audience. Thank you all for joining us today. Your attendance and participation are integral to the purpose of these roundtable engagements. So on that note, there are 2 more roundtables lined up next week on the 19th July, next Monday, same time, and on the 27th of July. So please do sign up and join us for those as well. You may also visit www.cgmalaysia.com or scan the QR code on your screen to stay updated with the latest news and upcoming activities. There you will be able to view the key takeaways as well as the presentations from each of the session. Okay, so video recordings of these sessions can also be found on Green RE and Climate Governance Malaysia's YouTube channels. Okay, so I think that's about it. Until the next one, take care and stay safe, and everyone, thank you.
Thank you.